Hey Star Trek fans, Dan Gunther here with my quick reaction to the latest episode of Star Trek Picard, The Impossible Box. I have to say right off the bat that I really enjoyed this episode, and warning for the rest of this video, there will be spoilers here. So this episode sees Picard and the crew of the La Sirena finally make it to the Borg artifact. But before they get there, they need authorization, and in one of my favorite scenes of the entire episode, we get this kind of equal parts funny, equal parts heartbreaking bit with Raffi Musiker contacting an old friend in Starfleet to get Picard authorization to visit the cube. The artifact, of course, is an abandoned Borg cube that we've seen in the past few episodes where all of the stuff with Soji and Narek is taking place. She manages to get that authorization by, twisting some arms kind of thing. But it's clear what this effort has cost her, and we see the fallout from what happened in the last episode with Raffi's unfortunate interaction with her son. It's really sad to see this character brought low again, and if we take her at her word that she had gotten clean, she's definitely backslid into her old habits of smoking snake leaf and drinking herself into oblivion. So it's really sad to see. We also see more fallout from last week's episode through Alison Pill's character, Agnes Girardi, who obviously is very torn apart by what she felt she had to do in the last episode to Bruce Maddox. And we see her kind of spiraling into some self-destructive tendencies here, it seems, claiming, of course, that her superpower is knowing she's making a mistake when she's in the middle of making it, basically going to sleep with Captain Rios. And that's a really heartbreaking scene because we know what has happened to her, what she's done, and it's going to make that betrayal of hers even worse in the future for Rios, now that they've established this kind of closeness. So, definitely building to something there. This episode also has some great acting by Patrick Stewart, who is facing the Borg once again. We know this is a huge part of his past, a huge source of trauma and PTSD for him. And now he's going to be visiting a Borg cube again for the first time since being assimilated as Locutus. So this is obviously weighing very heavily on him. We get him kind of doing some research into the Borg artifact where he learns that Hugh is the executive director of the Borg Reclamation project. So that's kind of his to be able to try and find Soji aboard the ship. Speaking of which, I love the reunion between Picard and Hugh. I really bought that these are two old friends in quote marks, seeing each other after a long time. Picard and his crew, of course, very influential in the path that Hugh has taken. Some more great lines in this where Hugh says something along the lines of getting a new name is the first step on the path to, creating a new identity and becoming a new person. And he learned that on the Enterprise when Geordi and Dr. Crusher gave him the name of Hugh. So, some really great tying to past Star Trek, a really great legacy of this character and bringing that character forward. Elnor in this episode as well has some chances to shine. I love his kind of almost pride in Picard when Picard says the best way to get aboard the Borg cube is through complete honesty rather than trying to pose as scientists or something like that. So he had this kind of pride of Picard that he's taking the way of the Coat Milat, this absolute candor. So that was nice to see. I also love, of course, that he disobeys Picard's orders and comes to his rescue aboard the Borg cube when Romulan soldiers are closing in on their position. And of course, Picard not coming down on him for it, but just thanking him. I have to say the end of the episode where Picard and Soji use the spatial trajector from the Sicarians, great continuity reference, by the way, wholly obscure, Batman. But yeah, they use that to get away, and Elnor stays behind on the Borg cube. I was initially I didn't agree with his decision to stay behind, but, as it plays out, you see he's protecting Hugh, who has to re-hide the room, the Queen's cell where the trajector is. So, yeah, that kind of works out. I've got to think that these characters are going to rejoin up at some point over the next 4 episodes. I love Elnor, and I hate to think this is the last we're seeing of him, especially the last we're seeing of him interacting with Picard. So I really hope that is they're brought back together later in the season. I also have to say, this is the first time in this entire season that I've actually cared about what's happening between Soji and Narek on the Borg cube. There's a lot of actual really good stuff between them, as Narek is kind of slowly drawing Soji into his spider web and giving her just a little bit of information here and there to kind of reel her in, as she's trying to figure out why these things are happening to her, why she's falling asleep when she talks to her mom, why her conversations with her only last for 70 seconds before ending every single conversation. Eventually, she discovers that all of her personal belongings have been replicated like basically 3 years ago, and none of her childhood things are actually old enough to be childhood things. They've obviously all been manufactured. And this kind of slow trickle of information as Narek helps Soji figure this all out. And then the ultimate betrayal at the end, when he tells her she's not real and never has been, and leaves her in the middle of this trauma at the end, and of course is killing her with some kind of radiation. It was brutal to watch, and her escape from that, and her ability to trust Picard. And there's a moment there where you're not sure if she's going to trust Picard when Picard finds her and tells her to come with him. Just incredible scenes, really great scenes played out here. So yeah, I'm still absolutely loving Captain Rios. I think he's a wonderful character. His friendship with Rafi, I think, was really nice to see. His hookup with Agnes Girardi, like I said, I think is going to play out over the next few episodes. It's going to have some real consequences for sure. Elnor, like I said, I hope we see him again. I hope that we get more of him. Hugh as well. I'd love to see more of Hugh. Picard and Soji are now on the planet Nepenthe, where they will rendezvous with the La Sirena in the next episode, presumably. So yeah, really interested to see where this is all going, where Agnes Girardi's betrayal is going to go, when that's going to be revealed. There's a lot happening here. It finally feels like the plot's really moving forward and really being pushed forward. So some great stuff in this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I definitely did. I'm looking forward to discussing it with Bruce and Brandy tonight on the live show, which will be at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern on this channel. So check that out. I'll have a link in the description where you can go there as well. Let me know in the comments, what did you think about the Impossible Box? Thank you all so much for watching. Thanks, of course, to the Patreon supporters. If you want to be a Patreon supporter, I'd really appreciate it. Go to patreon.com/Kertrats to sign up. And I will see you all in the next video and in the live show, I hope, tonight. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, as always, live long and prosper.